The stars burned cold and distant in the outer reaches of the Sagittarius Arm. Fleet Commander Zexthor stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Mighty Fang, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic display with satisfaction. 3,000 years the Crithian Empire had ruled the known galaxy, and every single species they encountered had learned the same lesson. Resistance was futile. Surrender was inevitable. The Empire always won. Today would be no different. His sensor officer had detected an unknown vessel drifting through space, clearly primitive, probably lost. It was small, barely the size of a Crithian courier ship. The hull was covered in strange angular plates and odd protrusions that made no aesthetic sense whatsoever. Zexthor had seen 1,000 alien designs, and this one looked like someone had assembled scrap metal in the dark. "Open communications," he ordered. His translator device began working immediately. "Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Commander Zexthor of the Crithian Empire. You have entered Imperial space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." The message repeated 3 times in the universal frequencies. Zexthor waited. Around him, his crew moved with practiced efficiency. Weapons were already charged, ready to deliver a warning shot. It was standard protocol. Fire across their bow, watch them panic, then bring them in for processing. Simple, clean, effective. A response crackled through the speakers, translated by the AI systems. "This is the UHSS Indomitable Spirit, Earth exploration vessel. We are on a peaceful mission of discovery. We mean no harm and claim no territory. We request peaceful dialogue." Zexthor clicked his mandibles in amusement. Earth, he had never heard of it. Another insignificant speck in the galaxy about to learn its place. He gestured to his weapons officer. "Fire warning shots. Standard intimidation pattern." 3 energy beams lanced across space, brilliant purple streaks that passed within 50 meters of the human vessel. They were low-powered, barely enough to damage a shuttle, but they always did the job. Every species understood violence. Aboard the Indomitable Spirit, First Officer Marcus Chen stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 3 weapons impacts, unprovoked, hostile action. "Captain, they just fired on us," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with controlled anger. Marcus took a deep breath. The Indomitable Spirit was an exploration vessel, yes, but like every human ship that left Sol system, it was built for war. Humanity had learned long ago that hope for the best, prepare for the worst was more than a saying. It was survival, shields up, defensive posture. Send another message. Tell them we are not hostile, but we will defend ourselves if attacked again. The message transmitted. Marcus watched the alien ships on his screen. 7 of them, each one massive, easily 3 times the size of his vessel. The Indomitable Spirit was outgunned, outmassed, and outnumbered, but it was not helpless. On the Mighty Fang, Zexthor received the human response with growing irritation. They dared to threaten the Empire? This primitive species in their ugly little ship thought they could negotiate. Increase power. Light bombardment. Disable their engines. Bring them in. His weapons officer adjusted the controls. This time, 12 energy beams converged on the human ship. Enough firepower to cripple a destroyer. The beam struck, and something impossible happened. The human ship's shields flared bright blue, absorbing the energy. The light show was spectacular, beautiful even, cascading waves of electromagnetic force dispersing the attack. But when the light faded, the human ship was still there, intact, undamaged, not even drifting. "Commander, their shields held," the sensor officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. "No damage, no power fluctuation. The energy was completely absorbed." Zexthor felt a tremor of uncertainty. That was not possible. No ship that small could mount generators powerful enough to absorb a full bombardment. "Unless, scan their power systems," he ordered. The sensor officer worked his console, then froze. "Commander, I am detecting a power signature I do not recognize. The energy output is enormous, far beyond what their size should allow." Aboard the Indomitable Spirit, Marcus made his decision. They had tried peace. They had tried warnings. These aliens had fired on a peaceful vessel twice. Earth fleet regulations were clear. Defend yourself. Defend your crew. Never fire first, but always fire last. Tactical, target their weapons arrays. Disable only. Use railguns minimum velocity. Fire when ready. The Indomitable Spirit's hull opened in 6 places. Magnetic accelerators, Each one 30 meters long, hummed to life. Tungsten rounds, each weighing 50 kilograms, loaded into firing position. The targeting computers calculated trajectory, velocity, impact points. The weapons were simple, ancient even by human standards. Chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. No energy signatures, no fancy technology, just mass and velocity. Physics did the rest. 6 rounds fired in half a second. They crossed the distance between ships in less time than it took to blink. The Crithian sensors never saw them coming. Energy-based detection systems could not track. Unpowered projectiles moving at a fraction of light. Speed. The rounds hit. The mighty fang shuddered as something punched through its forward shields like they were not even there. Alarms shrieked. 3 weapon arrays exploded in cascades of sparks and venting atmosphere. A second impact tore through the port side, shearing off an entire sensor cluster. A third and fourth round struck 2 of the escorting destroyers, punching clean through their shield generators and leaving gaping wounds in their hulls. Zexthor grabbed his command chair as the ship rocked. Damage reports flooded in, 3 destroyers disabled, 1 completely dead in space. His own vessel had lost 40% of its forward weapons, and they had not even seen the attack coming. What hit us? He demanded. The sensor officer was frantically reviewing data. I do not know, Commander. There was no energy signature. No particle beam, no plasma. It was solid matter, moving at .003 light speed. Our shields could not stop it because they are designed for energy weapons. Solid matter, Zexthor repeated slowly. They threw rocks at us? Very fast rocks, Commander. Very precise rocks. Another message came from the human ship. This is First Officer Chen of the UHSS Indomitable Spirit. We have disabled your weapons to protect ourselves. We do not wish further conflict. Stand down immediately or we will be forced to destroy your vessels. You fired first. We responded proportionally. Do not make us respond disproportionately. Zexthor stared at the small ship on his display. This changed everything. This primitive vessel had just crippled 3 Imperial warships in seconds using weapons his people had abandoned thousands of years ago. Weapons they had dismissed as crude and ineffective. How many more of those weapons do they have? He asked quietly. Unknown, Commander. But if their power generation is as strong as we detected, they could have dozens, maybe hundreds. For the first time in his 300 years of service, Fleet Commander Zexthor of the Crithian Empire made a decision that would have been unthinkable that morning. He ordered a retreat, all ships fall back. Emergency jump to rally point 7. Now, the Crithian fleet turned and activated their faster-than-light drives, leaving 3 crippled destroyers drifting in space. The human ship made no move to pursue. It simply sat there, shields glowing softly, watching them run. As the mighty fang entered jump space, Zexthor composed his report. He chose his words carefully, knowing they would reach the Emperor himself. But there was no way to soften the truth. We have encountered a new species. They call themselves humans. They possess defensive technology that renders our weapons ineffective. They possess offensive technology that bypasses our defenses completely. They engage in what appears to be kinetic warfare using relativistic projectiles. They demonstrated both restraint and overwhelming tactical superiority. I respectfully submit that this species represents a credible threat to the Empire and recommend immediate diplomatic contact rather than military action. He sent the message, then sat back in his command chair. 3,000 years of Imperial dominance, 3,000 years of never meeting an equal, and in one afternoon, a species they had never heard of had shattered that illusion with chunks of metal moving really fast. Back aboard the Indomitable Spirit, Marcus was already composing his own report to Earth Command. His hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline still coursing through his system. First contact achieved. Contact was hostile. Enemy force consisting of 7 large warships engaged us with energy weapons. Our shields held. We responded with minimum necessary force, disabling 3 vessels. Enemy fleet retreated, no casualties on either side, requesting immediate diplomatic and military support. We are not alone in the galaxy, and whoever these people are, they shoot first and ask questions never. He sent the message on the quantum link back to Earth, then looked at his crew. They were staring at him, waiting for orders. Young faces trained for exploration, now blooded in combat against an unknown enemy. We stay here, he said quietly. We watch, we wait. And we hope to God they do not come back with friends. But deep down, Marcus knew they would. Species that shot first did not give up easily, and humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the loudest possible way. With tungsten rounds traveling at 1,000 kilometers per second, the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Chen's speech to the Galactic Council. The galaxy watched and waited, wondering if the humans would keep their promise. Trade between humanity and the Kelvari flourished. Human ships regularly visited Kelvari worlds, bringing technology and taking back exotic goods. The Kelvari were gentle beings, standing about 1.5 meters tall with soft blue fur and large eyes. They valued art, music, and peaceful commerce above all else. On the colony world of Pelshara, Kelvari families worked in vast agricultural fields. The planet was famous for producing a grain that grew nowhere else in the galaxy. 3 major settlements dotted the main continent, each home to about 17,000 Kelvari. The morning sun rose over the eastern settlement of Mirvakel, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Farmer Kelvin stood in his field, checking the ripening crops. His daughter played nearby, singing a traditional Kelvari song about the harvest. It was a perfect morning, peaceful and warm. Then the sky changed. Dark shapes appeared above the atmosphere. They grew larger, descending rapidly. Kelvin's datapad began screaming warnings. His blood went cold as he read the identification codes. Zevrathi warships. 12 of them, inside, now, he shouted to his daughter. They ran toward their home, but they were too late. The first beam struck the center of Mirvakel. The energy weapon was designed for destroying military bunkers, but the Zevrathi aimed it at civilian buildings. The settlement's central plaza vanished in a flash of white light. The shockwave followed seconds later, knocking Kelvan and his daughter to the ground. All across Pelshara, the same horror unfolded. The Zevrathi systematically destroyed all 3 settlements. They took their time, making sure their weapons caused maximum damage. They wanted everyone in the galaxy to see this. They broadcast the attack on open channels, ensuring every species with a receiver could watch. Within 2 hours, it was over. 50,000 Kelvari civilians were dead. The settlements were smoking craters. The Zevrathi ships hung in orbit for another hour, as if daring anyone to respond. Then they transmitted a message to the human embassy on Nexus Station. We have disciplined your allies for their disrespect. They chose the wrong friends. What will the mighty humans do about it? The message was signed by High Commander Thralzek himself. The response from Earth came 18 hours later. It was brief. Only one sentence transmitted directly to the Zevrathi homeworld and broadcast across every major communication channel in the galaxy. Evacuate your frontier worlds. You have 72 hours, that was all. No threats. No demands. No explanation. Just a simple warning. The Zevrathi High Council met in emergency session. Some members argued for caution. The humans had warned them after all, but Thralzek convinced them otherwise. They are bluffing, he insisted. Look at the numbers. We have 3,000 warships. They have 300. We have controlled 40 systems for 1,000 years. They have 20 systems they have held for 2 centuries. This is psychological warfare. They want us to fear them, but there is nothing to fear. The Council agreed. Instead of evacuating, they mobilized their fleet. Every available warship was called to active duty. They positioned forces around their most important worlds. If the humans wanted war, the Zevrathi would give them one they would never forget. Meanwhile, human ships arrived at Pelshara. They were not warships, but medical vessels and transport carriers. Human doctors and rescue workers descended to the shattered settlements. They searched through rubble for survivors. They found Kelvan and his daughter in their collapsed home. Both were badly injured but alive. A human medic, a woman named Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, treated them herself. You are safe now, she said softly in perfect Kelvari. We will take care of you. But the Zevrathi, Kelvan whispered. They are too strong. Humanity cannot fight them. Dr. Okonkwo's face hardened. You let us worry about the Zevrathi. You just focus on healing. Every survivor was evacuated within 36 hours. Human ships carried them to safer Kelvari worlds. Medical teams worked around the clock. Not a single injured Kelvari was left behind. On Nexus Station, the Galactic Council held another emergency session. Species from across the galaxy demanded to know what humanity would do. Many feared a war that could spread across multiple sectors. Others hoped the humans would back down and avoid bloodshed. Ambassador Chen stood before them again. She looked tired. Dark circles showed under her eyes, but her voice was steady. The Zevrathi have killed 50,000 innocent civilians. They did this to mock us, to test us, to see if our words meant anything. She paused. In 48 hours they will have their answer. Ambassador, please reconsider, the Salvaran delegate pleaded. War on this scale could destabilize the entire region. Surely there is a diplomatic solution. There was a diplomatic solution, Chen replied. We offered it 6 months ago. We told everyone the rules. The Zevrathi chose to break them. Now they pay the price. Thralzek himself was present this time, attending via hologram. You are truly going through with this madness? Your little fleet against the might of the Zevrathi Empire? Yes, Chen said simply. Then you will be destroyed. Your species will learn a hard lesson about challenging your betters. Chen looked at him for a long moment. Commander Thralzek, in the 72 hours we gave you, did you evacuate any of your frontier worlds? Of course not. We do not run from threats, then the blood is on your hands, not ours. We gave you a chance. We always give one chance. She looked around the council chamber. To everyone watching, remember this moment. Remember that humanity offered peace. Remember that we warned them. What happens next is not because we wanted war. It is because we will not tolerate those who murder innocents and mock justice. She ended the transmission. The galaxy held its breath. Betting markets opened on various worlds, with most odds favoring a Zevrathi victory. Some species began moving assets away from the conflict zone. Others prepared to offer aid to whoever needed it after the battle. In human space, something was happening. Ships were moving, though few could track them. Humanity's stealth technology was better than most species realized. Resources were being positioned. Codes were being transmitted. Military personnel were saying goodbye to their families. On Earth, in the Military Command Center, Fleet Admiral Marcus Cole reviewed the battle plan one final time. His staff worked around him with quiet efficiency. All assets in position? He asked. Yes, sir, his second-in-command confirmed. Waiting for your order. Cole looked at the clock. 23 hours until the deadline. He thought about the Kelvari families torn apart by Zevrathi weapons. He thought about the children who would never see their parents again. He thought about the message humanity needed to send. Then we wait, he said. We gave them 72 hours. We will honor that. But the moment the deadline passes, we show them what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Across the galaxy, the 72 hours ticked down second by second, bringing the galaxy closer to a day it would never forget. Then we will know the true measure of our enemy, the Emperor said quietly, and we will respond accordingly. Grand Admiral, you have your orders. Assemble the punishment fleet. Find the humans. Bring me their surrender, or bring me their ashes. I do not care which, the Admiral bowed deeply. It will be done, Your Majesty. As the council filed out, Talara remained behind. The Emperor noticed and gestured for her to approach. You disapprove, he stated. I fear we are making a mistake, Your Majesty. We know nothing about these humans, nothing about their true capabilities, nothing about their numbers or their weapons. We are attacking out of pride, not strategy. The Emperor stood and walked to the great window overlooking the capital city. Below, billions of Crithians lived their lives, secure in the knowledge that the Empire protected them, that the Empire was invincible. For 3,000 years we have expanded, he said softly. Every species we encountered bowed to our strength. Some fought, all lost. The Empire stands because we never show weakness. If we appear uncertain now, if we hesitate, our subjects will question our power. Our enemies will see opportunity. No, Talara. We must respond with overwhelming force. We must prove that the Empire is still supreme. And if we are wrong, if these humans are stronger than we believe, then we will adapt, as we always have. But I will not show fear to an unknown species based on one encounter. The punishment fleet will succeed. It must. Talara bowed and left, her hearts heavy with foreboding. She had served the Empire for 200 years. Seen dozens of wars and negotiated countless treaties. Her instincts, honed over centuries, were screaming that this was different. The humans were different, but the Empire could not hear her warnings over the roar of its own pride. 3 days later, the punishment fleet assembled in orbit above the throne world. 50 warships, the pride of the Imperial Navy. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, destroyers, each one crewed by the finest warriors in Crithian space. Grand Admiral Kixtal stood on the bridge of his flagship. the inevitable conquest, and looked at his armada with satisfaction. This would be a lesson the galaxy would remember. The Crithian Empire did not lose, could not lose, would never lose. Meanwhile, in a secure conference room 3,000 light-years away, Marcus Chen stood before a holographic projection of Earth's military command. Admirals, generals, and civilian leaders filled the virtual space, all of them staring at the recording of the encounter. They watched the Crithian ships fire first. They watched the indomitable spirit's response. They watched the alien fleet retreat, and then they began asking questions. "How many ships did you count in total?" Admiral Sarah Okafor asked. She was the commander of the home fleet, responsible for protecting Earth itself. 7 in the immediate encounter, Marcus replied, but our long-range scans detected energy signatures consistent with at least 3 dozen more vessels within a few light-years. This was a patrol group, not a full fleet. We estimate they have hundreds of ships, possibly thousands. And their technology level? Advanced in some ways, primitive in others. Their energy weapons are sophisticated, probably more efficient than ours, but their shields are useless against kinetic weapons. They rely entirely on energy-based offense and defense. It is like they never considered that someone might just throw a really fast rock at them. A ripple of grim amusement ran through the virtual chamber. Humanity had spent 3 centuries perfecting kinetic warfare. It was cheap, effective, and required no exotic materials. A chunk of tungsten was a chunk of tungsten. Add enough velocity and it became a weapon that could crack planets. "Do you believe they will retaliate?" the Secretary General asked. Marcus nodded grimly. "Without question. They attacked us without provocation. When we defended ourselves, they ran. But species that act like that do not give up. They will come back, probably with many more ships, and they will be looking for our homeworld. Then we need to be ready," Admiral Okafor said. "I recommend we mobilize the home fleet, full deployment, and we activate the Porcupine Protocol in all colonial systems." The chamber fell quiet. The Porcupine Protocol was humanity's insurance policy. Every colony, every mining operation, every orbital station was surrounded by hidden weapon platforms. Thousands of autonomous drones, each carrying a single tungsten rod and basic AI targeting. They were cheap to build, easy to hide, and devastating in swarms. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity named its defense doctrine after a small Earth animal covered in spines. "Approved," the Secretary General said. "Admiral Okafor, you have full authority. Prepare our defenses, and pray we do not need them." But as the meeting ended and the holograms faded, everyone in that virtual room knew the same truth. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for 300 years. Not preparing to meet aliens, preparing to fight aliens, because humanity had studied its own history and learned one terrible lesson. When 2 species meet for the first time, the meeting rarely ends well. Someone always wants what the other has. Someone always shoots first. Humanity had decided long ago that they would never be the ones who shot first. But they would absolutely, without question, be the ones who shot last. The Crithian Empire was about to discover that there was something far more dangerous than a species that loved war. A species that hated war but was very, very good at it anyway. The mining colony of New Edinburgh orbited a dim red dwarf in what the colonists called the Scottish sector. 3,000 people called it home, working the rich asteroid fields that surrounded the system. They mined rare metals, built ship components, and lived quiet lives far from Earth. It was peaceful, remote, safe, until the Crithian punishment fleet arrived. 50 Imperial warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Grand Admiral Kixtal studied the scans with satisfaction. A small colony, minimal defenses visible, a few cargo haulers, some basic infrastructure. This would be simple. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let us offer them the chance to surrender." The message transmitted across all frequencies. "Human colony, this is Grand Admiral Kixtal of the Crithian Imperial Fleet. You are in violation of Imperial space. Surrender immediately and you will be granted clemency. Resist and you will be destroyed. You have 1 standard hour to comply." On the mining station, Colony Director James McLeod stared at the sensor display with growing horror. 50 ships, 50 massive warships, each one bristling with weapons. His little colony had exactly 4 armed patrol boats, designed to deal with pirates, not a full military fleet. "Get everyone to the shelters," he ordered, "and activate the Porcupine Protocol." His deputy stared at him. "Sir, we have miners scattered across a dozen asteroids. It will take hours to evacuate everyone. Then we buy them those hours. Activate the damn protocol." Now, deep in the asteroid field, buried in hollowed-out rocks that looked like any other space debris, thousands of autonomous defense platforms came online. Their basic AI systems analyzed the situation. Hostile fleet, colonial emergency, Porcupine Protocol active. Engage. Grand Admiral Kixtal waited the hour. No response came from the colony. Very well. They had chosen their fate. He gestured to his weapons officer. "Target the main station. Disable their power systems. We want prisoners for interrogation." The inevitable conquest's main batteries charged. Energy built, ready to lance across space and cripple the human station. The weapons officer began the firing sequence. And then something impossible happened. The asteroids moved, not all of them, just a few dozen. Small objects, no bigger than shuttles, separating from the rocks and accelerating toward the fleet. The sensors barely registered them. Small mass, low energy signature, probably escape pods or cargo containers. Irrelevant, except they kept coming. And then more launched. And more. Within 30 seconds, 200 small objects were burning toward the fleet on chemical thrusters. Within a minute, 500. Within 2 minutes, over 1,000, Admiral. "We are detecting multiple launch signatures from the asteroid field," the sensor officer reported, confusion in his voice. "Thousands of small objects. They appear to be autonomous drones." "Drones?" Kixtal repeated. "Activate point defense systems. Sweep them from space." The fleet's automated defenses came online. Energy weapons designed to intercept missiles and torpedoes swiveled toward the incoming swarm. They began firing, and drones started dying. Each shot destroyed one, sometimes two drones. The weapons were efficient, deadly accurate. But there were thousands of drones, and more kept launching. Each drone was simple: a chemical rocket engine, basic navigation, a single tungsten rod, and orders that were beautifully straightforward. Find enemy ship, ram enemy ship, detonate if intercepted. The Crithian point defense systems were good. They destroyed hundreds of drones. But you cannot shoot what you cannot target fast enough, and the drones were cheap, numerous, and expendable. For every 10 destroyed, one got through. The first impacts were almost gentle. Small explosions across the hulls of the Imperial ships. Nothing that could penetrate armor. Nothing that could breach shields. Except the drones were not trying to penetrate. They were trying to overwhelm. A dozen drones hit the destroyer Pride of Crithia. Another 20 struck the cruiser Glorious Victory. The point defense batteries tried to adjust, tried to target the incoming swarm, but there were too many. The fleet's sophisticated targeting systems, designed to track a few dozen incoming missiles, could not handle 3,000 simultaneous targets. "Admiral, we are losing point defense emplacements," the tactical officer shouted. "The drones are specifically targeting our defensive weapons." Kixtal felt the first stirring of genuine fear. They are drones. Simple machines. How are they coordinating? Basic networked AI, sir. They are sharing targeting data. When one identifies a vulnerability, they all know about it. And then the real weapons arrived. Mixed in with the swarm of small drones were larger platforms. These carried the same tungsten rods that had crippled Sexthor's fleet, but with more powerful magnetic accelerators. They waited until the point defenses were overwhelmed, until the Crithian ships were blind and desperate, and then they fired. 50 tungsten rods, each one weighing 200 kilograms, launched at .005 light speed. Admiral Sarah Okafor stood in the command center of the UHSS Washington, Earth's flagship and the pride of the home fleet. Around her, 200 warships hung in formation, a defensive wall between Earth and whatever might come from the stars. For 300 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. The moment when someone else found them. The moment when words failed and weapons spoke. That moment had arrived. New Edinburgh's report had been clear. The Crithians had found a human colony and attacked it. They had been driven off, but they would be back. The only question was when and where. Admiral Okafor did not intend to wait for them to answer that question. She was taking the war to them. The plan was simple and brutal. 3 strike groups, each consisting of 20 warships and supply vessels, would penetrate deep into Crithian space. They would not target military installations. They would not attack civilian populations. Instead, they would go after industrial infrastructure, shipyards, manufacturing centers, the capacity to wage war, and they would do it all at once, synchronized to the second, so the Empire would not know which way to look first. It was a strategy humanity had learned from its own bloody history. You do not fight a war of conquest. You fight a war of attrition. Make the enemy's victories cost more than they can afford. Make their defeats catastrophic. Make them decide that peace is cheaper than war. But there was another element to the plan, one that made Sarah's stomach twist with a mix of pride and dread. Psychological warfare. For decades, Earth's intelligence services had been monitoring radio transmissions from the Crithian Empire. They had learned the language, studied the culture, understood their fears and their pride, and now humanity was going to use that knowledge. Captain Zhang, she said, addressing the commander of Strike Group Alpha. Your target? The Varick shipyards, Captain Wei Zhang replied. Orbital construction facilities above their secondary industrial world. Intelligence suggests they produce approximately 30% of the Empire's military vessels. We jump in, disable the yards, broadcast our message, and jump out. 12 minutes on target. Captain Rodriguez, Strike Group Beta, the Thax Manufacturing Complex. Ground-based facilities. We will use precision kinetic strikes to destroy production centers while minimizing civilian casualties. Estimated time on target, 15 minutes. And Captain Okonkwo, Strike Group Gamma, the Hicks mining operations in the Talon Belt. Resource extraction for their war machine. We destroy the infrastructure, leave the miners alive, and make sure they understand exactly why this happened. Sarah nodded. Each captain understood their mission. Each crew was trained and ready. But she needed to make one thing absolutely clear. Listen to me, all of you. We are not butchers. We are not conquerors. Every target has been chosen to minimize loss of life while maximizing strategic impact. You will disable, not destroy when possible. You will warn civilians before firing. You will give them time to evacuate. But you will complete your missions. The Empire needs to learn that attacking humanity carries a price they cannot afford. Questions none came. These were professionals. They knew what was at stake. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 60 human warships vanished from Sol system. They're faster than light drives, bending space itself. They traveled through dimensions the Crithians barely understood, using navigation systems that humanity had spent 2 centuries perfecting. And they arrived at their targets within seconds of each other, despite being hundreds of light years apart. At the Varick shipyards, Captain Zhang's strike group appeared out of nowhere. Alarms immediately shrieked across the station. Crithian defense platforms began powering up weapons. But before they could fire, every Crithian communication frequency was flooded with a broadcast. The message was in perfect Crithian, delivered with flawless pronunciation. People of the Crithian Empire, we are humanity. For 80 years we have watched you from afar. We know your language. We know your culture. We know where you live, how you build your ships, and what you value. We did not seek this war. You attacked our people. You killed our explorers. You came to our homes with violence. Now we have come to yours. This is your only warning. Leave humanity alone, or we will dismantle your empire piece by piece. Then the human ships opened fire. Tungsten rods lanced through space, each one targeted with surgical precision. Defense platforms exploded. Construction arms snapped. Docking bays collapsed into vacuum. But the residential sections of the station remained untouched. The civilian ships trying to evacuate were ignored. Only the military and industrial infrastructure was destroyed. In 12 minutes, 30% of the Empire's shipbuilding capacity ceased to exist. At the Thax Manufacturing Complex, Captain Rodriguez's group performed a similar operation. They broadcast their warning, gave the workers 10 minutes to evacuate the factories, and then reduced the buildings to rubble with precisely placed kinetic strikes. Not a single civilian died, but the manufacturing capacity of an entire world was crippled. 6 months had passed since the Treaty of Neutral Station. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Crithian Empire, which had ruled unchallenged for 3,000 years, was no longer an empire. It was now the Crithian Federation, a voluntary alliance of worlds rather than a collection of conquered territories. The change had not come easily. When news of the peace treaty spread through imperial space, something unexpected happened. The subject species, the conquered peoples who had spent centuries under Crithian rule, saw an opportunity. If the mighty empire could be humbled by a species they had never heard of, if the Crithians could be forced to negotiate rather than dominate, then perhaps freedom was possible. The Velkar were the first to demand autonomy, a reptilian species that had been conquered 500 years earlier. They cited humanity's example. If humans could force the empire to the negotiating table, they argued, then clearly the old order was ending. They wanted representation. They wanted self-determination. They wanted to be partners, not subjects. Emperor Kha'Zix faced a choice. He could crush the rebellion with force as his ancestors would have done, or he could adapt as the humans had taught him. To his council's surprise, he chose adaptation. The Velkar were granted autonomy within a new federal system, and once that door opened, dozens of other species followed. It was painful. The old guard resisted. Some military leaders attempted coups. There were protests, riots, and brief conflicts. But Ambassador Talara worked tirelessly, using humanity's example as leverage. The humans, she argued, had shown that strength did not require domination. They had defeated imperial forces without conquering a single world. They had demanded peace, not submission. If the empire wanted to survive in this new era, it needed to learn from that example. Slowly, painfully, the empire transformed. The Eternal Throne became a symbol rather than an absolute authority. The War Council became a senate, with representatives from dozens of species. Emperor Kha'Zix, to his credit, embraced the changes. He understood that the alternative was watching his civilization crumble as more and more worlds broke away. And humanity, watching from afar, quietly approved. They had not set out to topple an empire, but by refusing to be conquered, by demonstrating that different paths were possible, they had sparked a revolution, not through violence or invasion, but through example. On the orbital station Crossroads, which had become the new center of human and Crithian cooperation, Admiral Sarah Okafor met with Fleet Commander Zexthor, the Crithian officer who had first encountered humanity, now commanded joint patrol operations in the neutral zone between their territories. It was strange, working with a former enemy. But both officers were professionals, and professionalism bred respect. "I have a question," Zexthor said as they reviewed patrol schedules in the station's command center. "One that has troubled me since our first encounter." "Ask," Sarah replied. "Your ships, your weapons, your entire military doctrine, all of it designed for warfare. Yet you went 300 years without a single major conflict among your own people. How is that possible? How does a species that understands war so well manage to avoid it?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "Because we remember what war costs. Our history is filled with conflicts that achieved nothing except death and suffering. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times, and when we finally stopped fighting each other, we made a collective decision. Never again. Never forget what we are capable of, but never use it against ourselves. But you built weapons anyway, because we are not naive. Peace is a choice, but not everyone chooses it. We hoped we would never meet another species. But if we did, we wanted to be ready. So we built our fleets. We trained our soldiers. We prepared for the worst while praying for the best." Zexthor clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "And what would you have done if you had arrived in the galaxy and found it peaceful? If every species you met greeted you with friendship?" Sarah smiled. "Then we would have had 200 very expensive science vessels and a lot of explaining to do to our taxpayers. But better to have weapons and not need them than to need them and not have them. Your empire taught us we were right to prepare." Zexthor nodded slowly. "We were arrogant. We believed our own mythology. 3,000 years of conquest made us think we were invincible. You shattered that illusion in minutes. And in doing so, you freed not just yourselves but dozens of species we had subjugated. The Velkar speak of you as liberators. The Fex call you the breakers of chains. You have become legends without trying. We did not want to be legends. We wanted to be left alone. Perhaps. But the galaxy will not leave you alone now. Other species have heard of you. Some fear you. Some want to ally with you. Some want to test themselves against you. You have announced your presence, Admiral. The question is, what will you do with that presence? Sarah considered that. It was a fair question. Humanity had wanted isolation, but isolation was no longer possible. The galaxy knew they existed. Other species were reaching out, asking questions, requesting contact. Earth's leaders were divided on how to respond. Some argued for maintaining distance. Others wanted full engagement with galactic politics. We will be what we have always been, she said finally. Cautious, prepared, willing to talk, but ready to fight. We will not seek conquest or expansion, but we will defend our interests and our allies. And if that means taking a more active role in galactic affairs, then so be it. But on our terms. Always on our terms. Zexthor extended his hand in the human gesture he had learned. Then I look forward to seeing what humanity does next. You have already changed the galaxy once. I suspect you will do so again. Sarah shook his hand. Let us hope the next changes are peaceful ones. Across the galaxy, in a small bar on the mining station New Edinburgh, James McLeod raised a glass with a group of visiting Crithian engineers. They had come to study human defensive systems and in the process had become friends. It was strange, sharing drinks with people whose fleet had tried to destroy his home 6 months earlier. But that was the nature of peace. Yesterday's enemies could become today's colleagues if both sides were willing to try. One of the engineers, a young female named Sixera, asked the question that had been bothering her since arriving. Director McLeod, your drones. They are so simple. Just a rocket and a rod of metal, yet they defeated our most advanced warships. How did you know that would work? James smiled. Because we tested them against ourselves. Every weapon system humanity builds is tested against our own defenses. Our shields, our armor, our tactics. We assume that any enemy we face will be as smart as we are, as creative as we are, as dangerous as we are. So we build weapons that can beat us, and then we build defenses against those weapons. And then we build better weapons. It is an endless cycle. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it keeps us alive. Your empire built beautiful ships designed to fight other beautiful ships. We built ugly ships designed to kill anything that threatened us. Neither approach is wrong. But when they met, ugly won because ugly was practical. The Crithian engineers nodded thoughtfully. They were learning lessons that would reshape their entire military doctrine. Efficiency over elegance, function over form, results over aesthetics. On Earth, in the United Nations building, the Secretary General addressed a crowd of reporters from dozens of human worlds and, for the first time, representatives from alien species. The Crithians had sent observers. The Velkar had sent diplomats. Even some of the smaller species that had been freed from imperial rule wanted to establish contact. 6 months ago, the Secretary General said, humanity learned we were not alone. We learned it in the worst possible way, through violence and conflict. But we also learned something else. We learned that the principles we hold dear, the values we fought so hard to establish among ourselves, can be applied on a galactic scale. Self-determination, mutual respect, the right to defend yourself without seeking domination over others. These are not just human values. They are universal values, and we invite any species that shares them to join us in building a better galaxy. The applause was thunderous. Humanity was no longer alone, and the galaxy was better for it. Years later, historians would point to this moment as the beginning of the Galactic Federation. Not a conquest, not an empire, but a voluntary alliance of free species, built on principles that humanity had learned through centuries of bitter experience. War was possible. War was sometimes necessary, but peace was always preferable. And peace was only possible when everyone involved had the strength to defend themselves and the wisdom to choose not to. On Crossroads Station, in a quiet observation lounge, Admiral Sarah Okafor and Fleet Commander Zexthor sat together, watching a joint patrol group pass by. Human ships and Crithian ships flying in formation, protecting the neutral zone. 6 months ago, such a sight would have been impossible. Now it was routine. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked. That first encounter, firing on the indomitable spirit. Zexthor was quiet for a long time. Every day. If I had shown restraint, if I had waited, if I had tried diplomacy first, none of this would have been necessary. But I was arrogant. I thought you were weak. I thought your small ship and strange technology meant you were primitive. I was wrong, and my people paid the price for my arrogance. But something good came of it. Your empire is now a federation. Dozens of species are free. And our two peoples are allies instead of enemies. Sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the best outcomes, perhaps. But I still wonder, Admiral. What if we had met peacefully? What if my first message had been one of greeting instead of threat? How different would the galaxy be? Sarah smiled. We will never know. But I choose to believe we would have ended up here eventually. Humanity was always going to defend itself. Your empire was always going to expand. Those two facts were incompatible. War was inevitable. But so was peace eventually. We just took the fast route. The fast route cost lives, yes, but fewer than a prolonged conflict would have. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we offered terms before either side was too invested in victory to accept peace. That is the lesson humanity learned from our own wars. End conflicts quickly, before they become generational. Make peace cheaper than war, and never ever fight a war of attrition you cannot win. Zexthor raised his drink, a human custom he had adopted. To peace, then, and to the unlikely friendship between two species that met in violence but chose to part in cooperation. Sarah raised her own glass. To peace, and to the galaxy we are building together. One where strength is measured not by how many worlds you conquer, but by how many you protect. They drank together, human and Crithian, former enemies now friends, and watched the stars turn slowly outside the viewport. The galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the Crithian Federation was at peace. And for the first time in 300 years, humanity was not alone. It was a good beginning. Not perfect, not without cost, but good. And sometimes good was enough. Somewhere in the void between stars, a human exploration ship detected signals from an unknown species. Captain Maria Santos read the translation with a mix of hope and caution. The message was simple. Hello, we come in peace. We wish to talk. She composed her response carefully, knowing that first contact was always delicate. This is Captain Santos of the human exploration vessel Horizon. We receive your greeting with friendship. We welcome peaceful contact and look forward to learning about your people. Please transmit your coordinates and we will arrange a meeting in neutral space. As she sent the message, she glanced at her tactical officer. Weapon status? All systems ready, Captain, but no hostile actions detected. They appear genuinely peaceful. Good, but stay alert. Hope for peace, prepare for war. That is the human way. And as the Horizon moved toward its rendezvous with a new species, humanity carried forward the lesson they had learned from the Crithians. The universe was dangerous. Contact was unpredictable. But with strength, wisdom, and a willingness to extend an open hand while keeping a weapon ready, even the most violent first meeting could lead to lasting peace. The galaxy was learning. And humanity was teaching, not through conquest or dominance, but through example, through showing that it was possible to be both peaceful and powerful, to be both kind and prepared, to want friendship but to demand respect. The Empire had freaked out when they discovered humans. They had thought no one was meant to possess ships like that. But now they understood. Those ships, those weapons, that whole terrifying military doctrine, was not meant for conquest, it was meant for survival. And in a galaxy full of unknowns, survival required strength. Humanity had that strength, and they were finally, carefully ready to share it with the galaxy. The destroyer Pride of Crithia took 3 rounds through its engine section. The ship broke in half, atmosphere venting in a glittering cloud. The cruiser, Glorious Victory, lost its entire command tower, the impact so violent that internal explosions tore through 4 decks. Another destroyer, the Eternal Wrath, simply stopped moving as its reactor was pierced clean through. In less than 5 minutes, the Crithian punishment fleet lost 15 ships. Not disabled, destroyed, hulls breached, crews dead or dying, and the drones kept coming. All ships retreat. Kickstal roared. Emergency jump! Get us out of here! The surviving Imperial vessels turned and fled, activating their faster-than-light drives. The drones did not pursue. They simply hung in space, a glittering swarm of tiny death machines, and waited for the next target. On the mining station, James McLeod watched the Crithian fleet vanish and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His hands were shaking. His colony, his 3,000 people, had just survived an attack by 50 warships, because humanity had built a defense system designed on a simple principle. If someone attacks you, make it cost more than they are willing to pay. How many drones did we lose? He asked quietly. Approximately 2,500, his tactical officer replied. We still have 4,000 active platforms remaining. And how much did each drone cost? About 5,000 credits, sir. Basic components, simple AI, cheap rocket fuel. The most expensive part was the tungsten rod, and we mined that locally. James did the math. They had just destroyed 15 warships, each one probably worth billions, using weapons that cost less than a decent ground vehicle. The economics of the situation were almost funny. Almost. Get a message to Earth Command, he said. Tell them the Porcupine Protocol works. Tell them the aliens came back with friends. And tell them those aliens now know exactly where we are. Because that was the terrifying part. The Crithians had found a human colony, which meant they could find more, which meant they could find Earth. And when they came for humanity's homeworld, they would not send 50 ships. They would send everything they had. But James McLeod also knew something the Crithians did not. New Edinburgh was a mining colony, a small remote outpost with 3,000 people and basic defenses, and it had just destroyed 15 warships without losing a single person. Earth had 200 warships. Mars had 150. The Belt had 300 more scattered across 1,000 installations. And every single one of them was surrounded by the same swarms of cheap, simple, devastatingly effective drones that had just torn through the Crithian fleet. The Empire thought humanity was weak because they used primitive weapons. They thought kinetic warfare was crude and unsophisticated. They were about to learn a very old Earth lesson. The simplest weapon, wielded with skill and in sufficient numbers, will always defeat complexity. Aboard what remained of the punishment fleet, Grand Admiral Kickstill sat in his command chair and stared at the casualty reports. 15 ships destroyed, 2,000 crew dead, another 1,000 wounded, and they had not even reached the human colony's main defenses. They had been turned back by automated drones that cost less than a shuttle to build. His communications officer approached hesitantly. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human colony. Play it." The message was simple, delivered in calm, measured tones. "This is Colony Director James McLeod of New Edinburgh. You attacked our civilians. You attacked our home. We defended ourselves using minimum necessary force. We could have destroyed your entire fleet. We chose not to. Consider this your only warning. Humanity wants peace, but we are prepared for war. And if you force us to fight, you will lose. Every single time, go home. Tell your leaders what happened here. And do not come back." The transmission ended. Kickstill sat in silence for a long moment. Then he composed his report to the Emperor. It was the hardest message he had ever written. But the truth could not be avoided. "Your Majesty, the punishment fleet has been defeated. We engaged what we believed to be a minor colonial outpost. We were wrong. The humans possess defensive capabilities that far exceed our intelligence estimates. They can deploy thousands of autonomous weapons platforms at minimal cost. Our ships are vulnerable to their tactics. I recommend immediate cessation of hostilities and diplomatic contact. We cannot win a war of attrition against an enemy who can build 1,000 weapons for the cost of one of ours." He sent the message, knowing it might cost him his command. But Kickstill was a soldier, not a politician, and soldiers understood when they were beaten. The humans had beaten them. With rocks and simple machines and cold, calculating efficiency, the Empire had learned a terrible lesson today. There were worse things than meeting a warlike species, meeting a species that did not want war but was terrifyingly good at it anyway. The cold left Jack's body slowly. His fingers twitched first, then his toes. The cryopod hissed as it opened, releasing a cloud of white mist into the dim room. Jack Miller took his first breath in what felt like forever, his lungs burning as they remembered how to work. "Welcome back, Captain Miller," said a calm female voice from speakers above. "This is Navi. Ship systems detected a critical problem requiring human oversight. Jack's eyes adjusted to the low light. He was in the cryo-sleep chamber of the colony, Ship Pathfinder. Rows of pods stretched into the distance, each holding a sleeping human. The room was silent except for the soft hum of machines keeping everyone alive. "Status report," Jack croaked, his voice rough from years of disuse. "Navigation systems are badly damaged," Navi replied. "Power levels at 43%. Life support stable. Ship trajectory unknown." Jack pushed himself up, muscles weak from the long sleep. The metal floor felt cold against his bare feet as he made his way to the nearest computer panel. The screen showed unfamiliar star patterns, nothing like the maps they had studied before launch. "Where are we, Navi?" he asked, tapping commands. Into the console. Unable to determine precise location, star mapping suggests we are approximately 78 light-years from Earth, but not in our planned flight path. Jack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cryosleep. The Pathfinder carried 10,000 colonists, all still sleeping in their pods. They had left Earth seeking a new home on a carefully selected planet. Now they were lost in unknown space with damaged systems. "Any other crew members awake?" Jack asked, already suspecting the answer. "Negative. Emergency protocols awakened only the commanding officer. All other crew remain in cryosleep." Jack moved to the bridge, his legs growing, stronger with each step. The main view screen showed the blackness of space dotted with unfamiliar stars. A blue-green planet hung in the distance with twin moons orbiting it. "What's that planet, Navi?" he asked, pointing at the screen. "Unknown. Not in our database. Preliminary scans show breathable atmosphere, liquid water, and vegetation. Temperature. Range is suitable for human life." Jack studied the readouts. It wasn't their intended destination, but it looked promising. Perhaps they could. A light began blinking on the communications panel. "Navi. What's that signal?" "Detecting artificial transmission from the planet's surface. Signal pattern suggests intelligent origin." Jack felt his heart race. "Intelligent? You mean aliens?" "Affirmative. Signal contains mathematical sequences that appear deliberately created. Translation impossible with current data." Jack stared at the distant planet. In all of human history, no one had ever made contact with alien intelligence. If the signal was artificial, it meant they weren't alone out here. He moved to the captain's chair and sat down, thinking. The ship was damaged, lost in unknown space. They had limited power and no way to know if they could reach their original destination. But here was a planet that could support human life, sending signals that suggested intelligent beings. "Navi, how many of the colonists can we wake safely, with our current power levels?" "Recommend maintaining minimum crew only. Waking more than 20 colonists would strain life support systems." Jack nodded. "What about our shuttlecraft? Are they operational?" "Shuttle Bay 1 contains 3 functional shuttles. Fuel reserves at 87%. Jack made his decision. "Set course for the planet, Navi. Standard orbit. I want detailed scans of the surface, especially near the signal source." Course adjusted. Estimated arrival in planetary orbit, 17 hours. As the ship changed direction, Jack went to check on the sleeping colonists. Row after row of pods filled the massive chamber, each containing a person who had left Earth hoping for a new beginning. Teachers, doctors, engineers, farmers, all the skills needed to build a new society. They had trusted their lives to this ship, to this mission. Now their fate rested in Jack's hands alone. He stopped at pod DR 1457. Through the small window, he could see the face of Dr. Tom Reed, the colony's chief scientist. Next to him was pod number 1458, containing his wife, Dr. Emma Reed, the xenobiologist. Jack had gotten to know them during the months of training before launch. Good people, brilliant minds. They would be valuable if he needed to wake someone. But, for now, they slept on, unaware of their changed circumstances. Back on the bridge, Jack studied the approaching planet more carefully. Navi's scans revealed continents and oceans, mountain ranges and forests. It looked eerily like Earth, yet subtly different. The oceans had a deeper blue color, and strange cloud formations spiraled across the northern hemisphere. Navi, are you detecting any large cities or structures? Negative for large-scale construction. However, several smaller clusters of artificial structures detected near the signal source. Technology level appears mixed. Some areas show energy signatures consistent with advanced technology, while others appear primitive. Jack frowned. That's odd. Could it be different civilizations? Insufficient data. Recommend closer observation. As the Pathfinder entered orbit around the planet, Jack got his first clear view of the surface. Forests covered much of the land, with strange purple and blue hues mixed among the green. Rivers cut silver paths through the landscape. Near the source of the signal, he could see a clearing with what appeared to be small settlements. Navi, focus scans on that area, Jack said, pointing to the screen. The image zoomed in, revealing structures that looked like a cross between stone huts and modern buildings. Some appeared ancient and weathered, while others seemed newer. Most curious was a partially buried complex at the center, its design unlike anything surrounding it. The signal originates from the central structure, Navy reported. Design suggests different builders than the surrounding settlement. Power signature detected despite apparent age. Jack made his decision. Prepare Shuttle 1 for launch. I'm going down there. Caution advised. Captain. Unknown biological and technological factors present potential dangers. Noted, Jack said, heading to his quarters to change into a proper uniform. But those people down there might have answers we need. And the 10,000 sleepers on this ship need a home. An hour later, Jack stood in the shuttle bay, dressed, in his captain's uniform, with an environmental suit packed just in case. He carried a standard exploration kit, scanner, medical supplies, emergency rations, and a sidearm. Navy. If I don't return within 48 hours, wake Dr. Reed and give him command. Understood, Captain. Shuttle 1 ready for launch. Jack climbed into the small craft, his hands moving automatically over the controls. As the bay doors opened, he looked back at the massive colony ship. 10,000 lives, all depending on what he found on the surface. The shuttle engines fired, pushing him away from the Pathfinder and toward the unknown planet below. As he entered the atmosphere, flames licked at the shuttle's heat shields. Through the viewport, the alien landscape grew larger, more detailed. Forests stretched to the horizon, and in the distance, he could see the clearing where the signal originated. Jack took a deep breath as he guided the shuttle down. He was about to become the first human to set foot on an alien world with intelligent life. Whatever waited below would change humanity forever. The shuttle touched down in a cloud of dust, engines powering down. Jack checked his scanner one last time, confirming the air was breathable. Then he opened the hatch and stepped onto the surface of a new world, the first human footprint marking the soil of a planet far from Earth. The adventure had only just begun. Jack stepped away from the shuttle, his boots pressing into soil that no human had ever touched before. The air felt strange in his lungs, clean and fresh, but with odd scents he couldn't name. The sky above had a slight greenish tint, and the sun looked smaller than Earth's but gave off a warm, comfortable light. He checked his handheld scanner, which pointed toward a structure half buried in the side of a small hill about a mile away. The signal was coming from there. Navi, can you hear me? Jack spoke into his communicator. Signal clear, Captain, replied the ship's AI. How is the environment? Breathable. Gravity slightly less than Earth. No immediate threats detected. Jack began walking toward the hill. I'm heading to the signal source now. The path took him through a forest unlike any on Earth. The trees had smooth, dark purple bark and leaves in shades of blue and green. Strange, bird-like creatures flew overhead with 6 wings that moved in perfect rhythm. Small animals that looked like a cross between rabbits and lizards scattered as he approached. Jack kept his hand near his weapon, but nothing seemed aggressive. After 30 minutes of walking, he reached the edge of the forest. Before him stretched a wide clearing, and at its center stood the half-buried structure. Up close, it was clearly artificial, made of a smooth, dark material that didn't look like stone or metal, with angular designs etched into its surface. Near the structure were smaller buildings made of wood and stone. They looked like homes, but Jack saw no sign of whoever built them. "The settlement appears abandoned," Jack said into his communicator. "No movement detected. Sensors show multiple life forms approximately half a mile west of your position," Navi reported. "They appear to be moving away." "They're avoiding me," Jack realized. "Probably saw the shuttle land." He approached the main structure carefully. What looked like a doorway was visible, though no actual door remained. Jack shined his light inside, revealing a corridor that led deeper underground. "I'm entering the structure," he told Navi. "Stand by." The corridor sloped gently downward, its walls covered in symbols Jack didn't recognize. His scanner indicated the signal was coming from deeper inside. After walking about 50 yards, the corridor opened into a large chamber. Jack's light barely reached the high ceiling. The room contained what looked like control panels and large, dark screens. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, suggesting no one had been here for a long time. "I've found some kind of control room," Jack reported. "Technology level, appears advanced, but inactive." He approached one of the panels, examining it without touching anything. The design was strange, but somehow familiar, as if the builders had similar ideas about how technology should work, despite being alien. "I wonder if—" Jack began, but stopped when his hand accidentally brushed against the panel. The entire room suddenly hummed to life. Lights flickered on overhead, and the screens lit up with symbols and images. Jack stepped back, startled but fascinated. "Navi, the facility is activating. It seems to respond to human touch." "Caution advised, Captain," Navi replied, her voice slightly broken by interference. "Unknown technology may pose risks." The largest screen in the center of the room now showed what appeared to be a star map. Jack recognized some constellations. This was a map of the local region of space, including Earth's solar system. "They knew about Earth," Jack whispered. As he watched, the images changed. Now they showed beings that walked on two legs like humans, but were clearly not human. They had longer limbs, larger eyes, and skin that seemed to shimmer with a blue-green color. The images showed them building great cities, traveling in space, creating what looked like gardens on different worlds. "Navi, I'm seeing images of what I believe are the builders of this facility. Bipedal humanoid, but definitely alien." A new sound filled the room, a series of musical tones followed by what could only be speech. Jack couldn't understand the words, but the pattern was clear. This was language, not random noise. One of the panels lit up with new symbols. As Jack watched, the symbols began to change, rearranging themselves. With a shock, he realized they were turning into English letters. "Navi, the system is translating itself. It's analyzing our communication and adapting." The process took several minutes, during which more screens activated, showing more images of the aliens and their technology. Finally, words appeared on the main screen. "Communication established. Welcome, Seeded Species Variant 7. "Seeded species?" Jack read aloud. "What does that mean?" The system responded to his question. "You are designation. Human. Your world designation. Earth, you were seeded by the architects 3.4 million cycles ago." Jack felt his heart pound faster. "Who are the architects?" "We are the architects. We seeded life on 126 suitable worlds. Your species is one of 27 that achieved space travel." Jack struggled to understand. These architects claim to have seeded life on Earth, created humans? Are there any architects still alive? "Are you alive?" Jack asked. "Negative. Last architect expired 42,1051 cycles ago. This is an automated facility. Purpose: preserve knowledge. Guide seeded species when ready. What happened to the architects? War with designation. Swarm. Architects defeated. Civilization ended. Remaining knowledge stored in facilities like this one on seeded worlds." Jack sat down on what appeared to be a chair, trying to process this information. An ancient alien species had apparently created life on Earth and many other planets. They had been wiped out by something called the Swarm. And now he, a lost human from a colony ship, had stumbled upon one of their knowledge vaults. "Do you have star charts? Navigation data?" Jack asked, thinking of the Pathfinder and its 10,000 sleeping passengers. "Affirmative. Complete stellar cartography available. Access granted to qualified seeded species." As Jack was about to ask another question, an alarm sounded from his communicator. "Captain, movement detected approaching your position," Navi warned. "Multiple life forms, approximately 20, moving slowly toward the structure." Jack looked at the entrance to the chamber. "The locals are coming back. Maybe they saw the facility." "Activate. Indigenous population designation tellers seeded species variant. 15 technological development, pre-industrial. Genetic compatibility with humans, 62%. "They're another seeded species?" Jack asked, surprised. "Do they know about the architects?" "Limited knowledge. Tellers regard architects as mythological beings. They lack genetic markers for full system." "Access." Jack heard sounds from the corridor, voices speaking in an unknown language, footsteps approaching cautiously. "Can you help me communicate with them?" Jack asked the system. Translation protocols initiated. Caution advised. Tellers have limited understanding of advanced concepts. Jack stood and faced the entrance, unarmed, hands visible. He had come too, far to hide now. The first contact between humans and another intelligent species was about to happen, and somehow he was the one representing all of humanity. The footsteps grew louder. Shadows appeared in the corridor, and then the first of the tellers stepped into the chamber. They were shorter than Jack, with copper-colored skin and large, expressive eyes. Their bodies had 6 limbs, 2 legs, 2 arms like humans, and a smaller pair of arms at mid-torso. They wore simple clothing made from woven plant fibers, decorated with geometric patterns similar to those on the facility walls. The lead teller carried a staff topped with glowing crystals. It stopped several feet from Jack, looking at him with what seemed like a mixture of fear and curiosity. Then it spoke, its voice melodic and complex. The architect system translated. "The ancestors said star travelers would return when the lights awaken." Jack took a deep breath. Everything he said now would become part of history. The first words between humans and aliens. "I come in peace," he said, using the oldest greeting he could think of. "My name is Jack Miller. I'm a human from a planet called Earth." As the translation reached the tellers, they looked at each other and then back at Jack. The leader stepped forward and spoke again. "I am Ren, voice of the tellers. The old stories say you carry the key to wake the sleeping knowledge. Is this true?" Jack looked around at the now active facility, then back at the tellers. "I think it might be, and I think we have much to learn from each other." Behind him, the main screen changed to show both humans and tellers standing together among stars. The universal translator provided the meaning of the architect text that appeared. "The seeded shall inherit the stars." Jack and Ren sat across from each other in the central chamber of the architect facility. 3 days had passed since their first meeting. In that time, Jack had learned much about the tellers, while they had been eager to hear about humans and Earth. "Your ship carries 10,000 sleeping humans?" Ren asked, his large eyes wide with wonder. The architect system translated his melodic speech perfectly now. "Yes," Jack confirmed. "They were supposed to start a new colony on another planet, but our ship got damaged and lost." Ren nodded, his copper skin reflecting the blue light of the chamber. "Perhaps this is not accident. The old stories say the star travelers would come when needed most. The tellers were a nomadic people who lived in small groups, moving with the seasons. They had simple technology, tools, weapons, and basic farming, but possessed remarkable mental abilities. Their communal memory allowed them to share experiences directly with each other, preserving their history without writing." "The architects visited our ancestors many times," Ren explained, using his middle pair of arms to create a glowing image in the air between them, a memory of a memory passed down through countless generations. "They taught us about the stars, showed us the patterns of life. Then they stopped coming. Our oldest memories show their sadness in final visits. Jack had spent hours studying the architect database. According to their records, the architects were fighting a war with something they called the Swarm. They lost that war about 20,000 years ago. The Eaters of Light. Ren nodded solemnly. Our stories speak of them too. The ancestors fled from shadows that consumed stars. Jack stood and walked to the main console. Navi, are you still connected? Yes, Captain, came the AI's voice through his communicator. I continue to monitor your position and the ship's systems. I'm sending you stellar navigation data from the architect database. It should help plot our exact location and potential. Routes home. Receiving data now, Navi confirmed. Processing. Jack turned back to Ren. The architects left more than just knowledge here. There's technology that could help both our peoples. The teller leader hesitated. We have tried to use the ancestor machines before. They do not respond to us as they do to you. Jack had noticed this. Many systems in the facility only fully activated when he touched them, remaining partly dormant when the tellers tried to use them. The architect system explained this to me, Jack said. Both humans and tellers have certain genetic markers the architects engineered into us, but they split the access codes between our species. Neither of us has complete access alone. Why would the ancestors do this? Ren asked. I think they wanted to ensure cooperation, Jack replied. They seeded many worlds, created many different intelligent species. Maybe they hoped we would all work together someday. A message from Navi interrupted them. Captain, I've analyzed the navigation data. I've located our original destination, Colony World. It's approximately 70 light years from our current position. That's too far with our damaged systems, Jack said, frowning. Correct. However, the data shows several potentially habitable worlds much closer. The nearest is only 3 light years away. Jack considered this. They could potentially repair the Pathfinder enough to reach a closer world. But as he looked at Ren and thought about what they had discovered here, he wondered if they needed to leave at all. There's something else you should know, Captain, Navi added, her voice oddly urgent for an AI. Long-range sensors have detected unusual energy patterns at the edge of this solar system. The patterns match descriptions in the architect database of swarm scout ships. Jack felt a chill run through him. Are you certain? The match is 96% probable. The architect data suggests these are advanced scouts that precede the main swarm by several days. Ren had gone very still. The Eaters of Light have returned? Jack nodded grimly. It seems so. Navi, how much time do we have? At current approach speeds, the scout ships will reach planetary orbit in approximately 5 days. If they follow patterns described in the architect database, the main swarm would arrive 3 to 4 days after that. Jack looked around the chamber with new urgency. This facility must have defenses. The architects wouldn't leave their seeded worlds completely unprotected. Defenses exist, the architect system displayed on the main screen. Orbital platforms, planetary shield, requires full genetic access to activate. Full genetic access, Jack repeated, meaning both human and teller DNA together. Ren stood up, his 6 limbs moving in perfect coordination. We must warn my people. Many teller groups live across the Great Plains. They must come to safety. And I need to prepare the Pathfinder, Jack added. Navy, wake Dr. Reed and the chief engineer. Brief them on the situation. Acknowledged, Captain. As Ren left to alert his people, Jack studied the facility's schematics displayed on the main screen. The orbital defense platforms were scattered around the planet dormant for millennia. The shield generator was built into a mountain range 100 miles north, all waiting for the right genetic combination to wake them. 2 hours later, Jack stood in the shuttle bay of the Pathfinder, greeting the newly awakened colonists. Tom Reed, the colony's chief scientist, was first to approach, still shaking off the effects of cryosleep. Jack, Navi told us what's happening, but it's hard to believe, he said, running a hand through his gray-streaked hair. I know it sounds crazy, Jack replied, but everything I've found confirms it. The architects were real. They created life on Earth and many other worlds, and their ancient enemy is heading our way. Emma Reed joined them, her eyes bright with excitement despite the danger. As the colony's xenobiologist, the discovery of the tellers was the opportunity of a lifetime. "I need to meet them," she said. "If what you say about the genetic keys is true, we'll need to understand exactly how they work." Jack nodded. "That's why I woke you both. Tom, I need you to help analyze the architect technology. Emma, you'll work with the tellers to figure out the genetic interface." Chief Engineer Patel approached, already looking at schematics on a tablet. "Captain, these defense platforms are incredible. If we can get them working, they could protect both the planet and our ship." "That's the plan," Jack confirmed. "We have about 5 days before the scout ships arrive, maybe 8 until the main swarm gets here." As they prepared to return to the surface, Jack looked out the viewports at the blue-green planet below. Just days ago it had been an unknown world. Now it might be humanity's last hope. On the surface, Wren had gathered the leaders of nearby teller groups. They met with Jack and the human scientists in a large tent at the edge of the architect facility. Despite the language barrier, Emma Reed quickly established communication through the architect translation system. "The genetic key is fascinating," she told Jack after examining both human and teller DNA samples. "The architects didn't just seed life randomly, they designed complementary systems across different species. Can we use it to activate the defenses?" Jack asked. Emma nodded. "I think so. When humans and tellers work in close proximity, both experience enhanced abilities. Have you noticed anything unusual when working with Wren?" Jack thought about it. "I've been having moments of unusual clarity, and sometimes I seem to feel what he's feeling." "Exactly," Emma said excitedly. "The architects built a low-level, telepathic link between compatible seeded species. It's subtle but real. I believe that's the key to fully accessing their systems." As night fell, Jack stood outside looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was coming. The same enemy that had destroyed the mighty architects was now heading toward this small planet, with its 10,000 sleeping humans and scattered teller tribes. Wren joined him, his copper skin silvery in the moonlight. "My people speak of a time when different children of the ancestors would stand together against darkness. We thought it just a story." "Sometimes stories come true," Jack replied. "Tomorrow, we head to the shield generator. If Emma's right about the genetic interface, we'll need humans and tellers working together to activate it." "And if we fail?" Wren asked softly. Jack looked up at the stars again, thinking of all the sleeping colonists depending on him, of the tellers who had lived peacefully on this world for thousands of years, and of the ancient architects who had set this all in motion millions of years ago. "The architects seeded dozens of worlds," he said finally. "They lost their war, but they made sure their legacy would continue through us. We won't fail." As they spoke, a shooting star streaked across the sky, too bright, too straight to be natural. The first swarm scout had entered the atmosphere. The race against time had begun. Dawn broke over the mountains as 3 shuttles rose from the Pathfinder. Jack piloted the lead craft, with Emma Reed and 4 other awakened colonists aboard. Behind him flew shuttles carrying engineering teams and basic weapons. In the distance, thin trails of smoke marked where 2 swarm scout ships had crashed during the night. "Navi status update," Jack called through the communicator. 3 swarm scouts have entered the atmosphere," the AI replied. 2 were destroyed by automated defenses. 1 has landed approximately 40 miles west of your position. That was both good and bad news. The ancient defense systems still worked at a basic level, but they hadn't stopped all the scouts. What about the main swarm fleet? Long-range sensors. Detect large energy signatures 7 days out from the planet, consistent with architect records of swarm hive ships. 7 days. Not much time to prepare. The shuttles passed over forests and plains, heading toward a mountain range where the main shield generator was located. Below, Jack could see groups of tellers traveling on foot and on large 6-legged animals that resembled horses with scales instead of hair. They landed at the base of the tallest mountain. Wren was already waiting with 30 tellers, their copper skin gleaming in the morning light. "More of my people come from distant settlements," Wren said, as Jack approached. The elders remember how to reach the sacred mountain from our oldest memories. Jack nodded. Good. We'll need as many of you as possible to help activate the full defense system. According to the Architect database, the mountain contained not just a shield generator, but a command center for the entire planetary defense network. It had been designed to be operated by multiple seeded species working together. The entrance was half hidden behind a waterfall, a door made of the same strange material as the first facility. It didn't open until both Jack and Ren placed their hands on the control panel. Genetic verification accepted, announced a voice in the Architect language, then repeated in English and the Teller tongue. Welcome, inheritors. They entered a vast chamber carved into the mountain. Unlike the smaller facility, this one showed no signs of decay. Lights activated as they walked, illuminating hallways and rooms filled with technology far beyond human understanding. It's beautiful, Emma whispered, studying displays that appeared in the air around them. The architects were masters of biointegration. Their technology responds to living tissue. Chief Engineer Patel was examining what appeared to be the main control systems. This is going to take time to understand. We have 7 days to figure out technology that's thousands of years ahead of ours. The architects wanted us to use this, Jack reminded him. They built it for their seeded species to find. As human engineers and scientists spread through the facility, tellers arrived in growing numbers. Ren organized them into groups, explaining their role as best he could. Many were frightened, having never seen technology before, but their trust in their leaders and the ancient stories of the ancestors kept them cooperative. Jack found himself drawn to a large spherical chamber at the center of the facility. Inside was a raised platform with handprints marked on its surface, some clearly designed for human hands, others for the 6-fingered hands of tellers. This is it, he said when Emma joined him. The primary interface. Emma scanned the platform. With her equipment, the genetic markers are lighting up. This requires direct neural connection from both species. Jack called Ren to join them. I think we need to try activating this together. Ren studied the handprints. Our oldest memories speak of joining minds with the ancestors. Is this what they meant? One way to find out, Jack said, positioning, his hands over the human prints. Ren did the same with the teller prints. They looked at each other, then pressed their hands down simultaneously. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Jack felt a rush of energy through his body, and suddenly his mind was expanding. He could feel Ren's thoughts, memories flooding into him. Thousands of years of teller history, experiences passed down through generations. At the same time, Ren was receiving Jack's memories, Earth, the journey through space, the sleeping colonists. Their minds merged and extended beyond the facility, connecting to the orbital platforms, sensor arrays, and defense systems spread across the planet. When they finally broke contact, both collapsed to the floor, gasping. Did you see it all? Jack asked when he could speak again. Ren nodded, his eyes wide. Your world, so many humans, machines everywhere. And I saw yours. Your people's memories going back thousands of years. The architects visiting, teaching you. Emma helped them to their feet. What happened? The whole facility just lit up, like a Christmas tree. We activated it, Jack said, but it's not enough. We need more people, humans and tellers together, to fully power the defense grid. He explained what they had experienced. The mental connection was the key. The architects had designed the system to require the combined brain power of multiple seeded species. The architects were geniuses, Emma said after running more scans. The system uses quantum entanglement principles to link minds together, creating a living network more powerful than any computer. By evening, 50 humans had been awakened from the colony ship and transported to the mountain facility. They worked alongside 100 tellers, forming pairs at smaller interface stations throughout the complex. Jack stood at the main control platform with Tom Reed, watching as displays showed the defense grid coming online. Orbital weapons platforms were powering up. Sensor arrays extended their reach, tracking the approaching swarm. It's working, Tom said, amazed. The shield generator is at 60% and rising. Another day and we should have full coverage. But they didn't have another day. Captain, called one of the technicians. We're detecting high-speed objects entering the atmosphere. Dozens of them. Jack rushed to the display. Navy, what are we seeing? Multiple swarm craft approaching, the AI reported. Pattern consistent with attack formation. The main fleet has accelerated. Estimated arrival now 48 hours. They must have detected our defense preparations, Jack realized. They're trying to take out the shield before we can get it fully operational. Ren joined him at the display. What can we do? Jack studied the tactical situation. The shield wasn't ready, but some of the orbital weapons were online. We fight, he said simply. Tom, get the shield to whatever level you can. Emma, we need more neural connections. Wake more colonists. The Pathfinder is vulnerable, Patel pointed out. If the swarm detects 10,000 sleeping humans, Jack nodded grimly. They'd be a prime target. Navi, move the ship to the dark side of the larger moon. Power down all non-essential systems. Acknowledged, Captain. Beginning maneuvers now. As the Pathfinder moved to safety, Jack and Ren returned to the main interface platform. We need to coordinate the orbital defenses manually until the automatic systems are fully online. Jack, I explained. Ren placed his 6-fingered hands on the designated spots. Like before? Our minds together? Yes, Jack said, positioning his own hands. But this time we'll be fighting. They pressed down together, and once again their minds merged. This time they were ready for it. Directing their combined consciousness toward the orbital platforms, through the neural link they could see the incoming swarm ships. Dark angular craft that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Jack targeted the lead ships, feeling Ren's mind working alongside his. Their thoughts moving faster than would be possible alone. Beams of energy lanced out from the orbital platforms, striking the first wave of swarm craft. Several exploded while others broke formation trying to evade. But more kept coming. The swarm attacked with cold efficiency, probing for weaknesses. Several ships targeted the mountain facility directly, their weapons powerful enough to penetrate. The partial shield. The mountain shook with nearby impacts. Warning signals flashed across the displays. Shield integrity at 40%, called one of the technicians. Another direct hit and we'll lose the eastern sector. Jack and Ren pushed, harder through the neural link, redirecting defensive fire. They managed to destroy the ships targeting the facility, but others were landing across the planet. When they finally broke contact, both were exhausted. Blood trickled from Jack's nose, and Ren's copper skin had taken on a sickly gray tone. We held them off, Jack said, wiping the blood away. For now. But more come, Ren replied weakly. Many more. Tom Reed approached with new scans. The main swarm fleet has accelerated again. They'll be here in 24 hours. Jack looked around at the humans and tellers working together, their faces tired but determined. They had activated ancient technology beyond their understanding. Fought off the first attack, but the real battle hadn't even begun. Then we have 24 hours to prepare, he said. And we'll need a new strategy. The architects couldn't defeat the swarm with technology alone. We need to find a different way. As night fell, lights from swarm scout ships could be seen moving across the sky. The enemy was here, probing their defenses, searching for weaknesses. Tomorrow would bring the real test. Dawn revealed the damage from yesterday's battle. Smoking craters dotted the landscape where swarm ships had crashed. 3 of the orbital defense platforms had been destroyed. In the mountain facility, humans and tellers worked frantically to repair damaged systems. Jack stood at the main display, studying the approaching swarm fleet. The mass of ships looked like a dark cloud moving toward the planet. How many? He asked Tom Reed, who was analyzing the sensor data. Over 200, large vessels, Tom replied, his face grim. Thousands of smaller craft. The architect records weren't exaggerating. The swarm is a force designed for total consumption. Emma joined them, looking tired but determined. We've figured out something important about the swarm. They operate with a hive mind. All ships connected to central command vessels. Like insects, Jack said, thinking of bees or ants. Exactly. and they're predictable because of it. They use patterns the architects documented thousands of years ago. They haven't evolved or adapted. They're strategies. Jack saw a glimmer of hope in this. So they're powerful but not creative. They don't need to be, Tom pointed out. Their patterns worked against the architects. But we're not the architects, Jack said, an idea forming. And neither are the tellers. We're something new, something the swarm hasn't encountered before. He called for Wren, who arrived with several teller elders. Together, they gathered in the command center to hear Jack's plan. The architects were a single species, Jack explained. Highly advanced, but they thought in similar ways. The swarm adapted to their patterns and overwhelmed them. He gestured to the humans and tellers around the room. But we're different species with different ways of thinking. When we connect through the neural interface, we create something unique, a hybrid consciousness the swarm has never faced. Wren nodded in understanding. Two keys unlock what one cannot. Exactly, Jack continued. The shield and orbital weapons aren't enough on their own. But if we use our combined minds to create unpredictable attack patterns, we might confuse the swarm long enough to find their weakness. The plan came together quickly. 100 human teller pairs would connect to different parts of the defense network. Unlike the architects who had used automated systems with predictable algorithms, these pairs would make decentralized decisions, creating chaos in the swarm's carefully ordered attacks. Meanwhile, Jack had another idea. Navi, can the Pathfinder be piloted remotely? Affirmative, Captain. I can control all ship functions. Good. Bring it out of hiding. We're going to use it. Several teller elders were concerned. You would risk your sleeping people? One asked. Not the people, Jack clarified. Just the ship. The swarm wants to consume resources, right? The Pathfinder is full of metals and technology they would consider valuable. A trap, Wren said, understanding. Jack nodded. Navi will pilot the ship while keeping all cryopods safe in the central section. We'll use it to lure a portion of the swarm away from the main attack. As the swarm fleet entered the outer atmosphere, everyone took their positions. Jack and Wren stood at the primary interface, ready to coordinate the overall defense. Human teller pairs connected throughout the facility, each controlling a different weapon system or shield section. Remember, Jack told them all, don't think like machines. Be unpredictable. Use your combined instincts. The neural links activated, and Jack once again felt his mind expanding, joining with Wren's. But this time he could sense the other pairs too. A network of hybrid consciousness spreading across the defense grid. The swarm attacked in perfect formation, waves of ships following precise patterns. But instead of meeting an equally predictable defense, they encountered chaos, weapons fired from unexpected angles, shields strengthened in some areas while deliberately weakening in others, creating traps. Through the neural link, Jack could see the confusion spreading through the swarm. Their perfect formations began to break apart as they tried to adapt to the unpredictable defense. It's working, Tom called out from his station. They're breaking pattern. On the far side of the planet, the Pathfinder emerged from behind the moon, its engines at full power. As Jack had predicted, a large portion of the swarm broke away to pursue what appeared to be an easy target. Navi, execute maneuver Omega, Jack ordered through the link. The colony ship suddenly changed course, diving toward the planet's largest ocean. The pursuing swarm ships followed, exactly as planned. Just before impact, the Pathfinder pulled up sharply while jettisoning its empty fuel containers. The massive explosion as the fuel ignited caught dozens of swarm ships, destroying them instantly. The electromagnetic pulse disrupted the coordination between the remaining ships, causing them to crash into each other. Back at the mountain facility, Jack and Wren pushed deeper into the neural link, searching for the swarm's command structure. Through the architect's sensor network, they found it. 5 larger vessels hanging back from the main battle, directing the attack. There, Jack said through the link, highlighting the command ships for all the neural pairs to see. Everything at those 5 ships now. Every operational weapon in the defense network fired simultaneously at the command vessels. Some shots missed, Some were blocked, but enough got through. One by one, the command ships exploded. The effect on the remaining swarm was immediate and dramatic. Without central direction, the ships lost all coordination. Some continued attacking randomly, others flew in circles or crashed into each other. A few retreated into space. "Keep fighting," Jack ordered through the link. "Target any ship still attacking." The battle continued for hours, with the human-teller pairs working in perfect harmony. When it was finally over, the skies were clear of swarm ships. Those that hadn't been destroyed had fled the system. Jack and Ren disconnected from the interface, both exhausted but alive. Around them, other pairs were doing the same, many collapsing from the mental strain but smiling in victory. "We did it," Jack said simply. "We beat them." Ren nodded. Not as the architects would have. As something new. In the days that followed, the Pathfinder returned to orbit, damaged but intact. The cryopods had remained safe, all 10,000 colonists still sleeping peacefully, unaware of how close they had come to destruction. Jack stood with Emma and Tom on a hilltop near the architect facility, watching tellers and awakened humans working together to build shelters. "What now?" Emma asked. "Do we continue to our original colony destination?" Jack looked at the blue-green world around them, thinking of everything they had discovered. "This was meant to be our home," he said. "The architects planned it millions of years ago. They seeded Earth and this world, created the tellers and us, left their knowledge for us to find." Tom nodded. "The orbital scans show this planet has everything we need: fertile land, abundant resources, and the tellers have offered to share it." Below, Ren was teaching a group of human children about local plants while teller youngsters watched a human engineer demonstrate a simple machine. Already, the two species were learning from each other. "Navi," Jack called through his communicator. "Begin waking process for all colonists. Group Alpha first, construction and agriculture. Specialists." "Acknowledged, Captain. Waking process initiated." Emma smiled. "So we're staying?" "Yes," Jack confirmed. "But not just to build our own colony. We're going to build something new, a world where humans and tellers live together." He pointed to the stars becoming visible as the sun set. "And then when we're ready, we'll find the other seeded worlds. The architects created 27 spacefaring species before they were destroyed. Some of them must still be out there." Ren joined them on the hilltop, his copper skin glowing in the sunset. "The old stories say the children of the ancestors would one day unite the stars." "They were right," Jack said. "This was just the beginning." That night, as the humans began constructing their first permanent settlement, Jack returned to the architect facility alone. He placed his hand on the main console one last time. "Thank you," he said to the ancient beings who had set this all in motion millions of years ago. "We'll carry your legacy forward." The screen lit up with a final message in the architect language, translated for him to read. "The seeded have become the seeders. The cycle continues." Jack nodded. The architects were gone, but their dream lived on through their children, humans, tellers, and all the other species waiting to be discovered among the stars. And Jack Miller, who had begun this journey as just a colony ship captain, had become something more, the first navigator of this new chapter in the story of life in the universe. As he stepped outside, he looked up at the night sky, no longer seeing just stars but future homes, future allies, future adventures. The journey had only just begun.